Welcome to ARC's webinar on remote operations and the connected worker. Welcome from me. I'm Constanze Schmitz, and an analyst, the senior editor of ARC in Europe, and Naresh Surpelli, who's our senior analyst and the expert on the topic. We will guide you through some data and information that ARC has collected over the years, especially what happened during COVID, of course, because this is a real boost for the topic. We had a survey where we will share the information with you. And welcome, and let's get started. Could I have my next slide, please? Naresh.
Yep.
He's the one.
Oops.
Well, very short look on the agenda, so what's coming your way. We'll do a very short introduction of how we define remote operations and a connected worker. And then Naresh will take us through the development that we have gone through over the last years. And I will present then a few of the basic technologies that are available and how they're used. And then we're happy to share some recommendations and the benefits that ARC has extrapolated for the topic. So we all know what a control room is, and that's normally the physical place where control room operators and managers make their real-time decision based on the critical information they receive from their systems. While this should not pose no problem when they are physically present in the control room, what is if they are in a remote location? What if they need from home? Today's control room technologies make it possible for people even to access it remotely, but we will look into how that is done and what technology can be used for that later. Oh, welcome to my colleague who just joined us on 4 Pores. Sorry. The other topic that is, of course, connected to that is the connected worker. If he uses advanced technologies, it allows him to perform tasks regardless of where his supervisor or his colleague is physically located. By this, we can improve the communication between shifts and even between locations. They get provided easy access to equipment knowledge to complete the tasks at hand. And it can offer workers real-time information to guide their actions. And now Naresh will take us through the topic of remote operations and COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Constanze, for your opening remarks. Hello, everyone. My name is Naresh, and I'm based out of Dresden, and I've been working with ARC for over 10 years. So today, I'm going to briefly walk you through what happened, as my colleague said, during the pandemic, and what were the manufacturing companies doing, and what were the challenges, and how or what steps companies took to address and overcome those challenges. I love this picture very much. Thanks to markettunis.com, and I hope you all love this picture, and I think we all believe on this. And of course, whole world knows what happened during the year 2020, but we would like to give an ARC perspective. So looking at the situation during the pandemic impacted almost every industry worldwide and forced businesses to create social distancing in workplaces, and lockdowns and COVID-19 safety measures that were put to curb the virus spreading, which reduced on-site staff and limited their abilities to support the plant's operations. And the situation was anyone who can work remotely should definitely work from home office. And for the home office employees, companies needed to provide a reliable, fast network at home for virtual meetings and to enable remote support and so on. So as per ARC research findings, some companies did work out to install fast and reliable networks pretty quickly at their employees' home, but however, the cybersecurity issues were there to be addressed. But when we look at for people who have to be physically in the plant, companies were supporting and protecting employees by sanitizing manufacturing areas and separating on-site workers. And more important thing was separating control room operators and sanitize control rooms, as control room operators are the key people who are well trained to keep the plant operating. And in some instances, without them, plant has to be shut down as per our findings. So additionally, companies are also dealing with to conduct regular health checkups and temporary checks of the health of the plant staff or employees, which were never part of the company situation before, and offer their immediate medical support if need be, and offer personal protective equipment, protective gear in the plant area, such as masks and etc. And because as the situation was pandemic, as we all know, I mean, these were not available in the market as well. So it is a cash in a nutshell. But along with that, there are also quarantine issues. I mean, when an employee gets infected, companies have to take care of the measures to put the employees in a quarantine and so on, and look for the additional employees to replace the quarantine employees. Additionally, supply chain disruptions due to some countries' borders were closed, and which had a huge impact on businesses, as the raw materials needed for the production were not available at the right time to manufacture their products. And in this regard, some global companies that have plants across the globe had to move the production operations to countries that have their borders open. So despite such a situation, companies needed to run, in any case, the plant and maintain normal operations while keeping the plant personnel safe. So this really impacted how the companies interacted with suppliers and the their supply chain companies and integrators and customers as well. For example, if a machine went down, vendors were not able to get their expert staff to the plant to fix an issue. So hence it was very clear that companies needed to work on a strategy to collaborate with remote experts to support their on-site workers. And so the pandemic was, in our view, was clearly an accelerator for new digital technologies. So moving on to my next slide. So ARC did a survey in May 2020 to identify impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on industrial companies. And I'm not going to take you through all of these survey results, but when we take a closer look at survey results, the top 3 tasks that companies had to work on during the pandemic were such as adding new safety policies and make employees to work from home and maintain social distancing, as we just explained in the previous slide. So moving on to the next slide, having spoken about the situation, now looking at what else the companies were doing and what were their strategies to overcome their challenges. So firstly, traditionally, industrial personnel worked together at one common place. I mean, now the new challenge was employees were no longer in a common location, using homes as work locations, and employees had to be supported with other distractions from family situations, like taking care of kids and daycare at home and so on. So when we look at cash management challenges, ARC noticed that some companies were seeing reduction in capital projects and prioritizing, for example, postponing or canceling their planned projects, and reduce staff with temporary leaves and pay cuts. But along with that, they had issues with regulations and labor laws and across the countries, I mean, different union issues, and so on. But to resolve, some companies worked out to resolve production and supply chain issues. Some companies were dealing with changing supply chains, for example, so looking for sourcing raw materials from different regions, or looking for different suppliers so that plant can continue to run. And as the borders were shutting down in one location, and a few companies were thinking of possibilities of revamping production to another locations, as they have plants in different locations. And some companies did, it is very interesting to know that some companies did convert their assembly lines to manufacture new equipment, like motors for to manufacture motors for producing ventilators, masks, and needed drugs at the point of time those days. So another thing that survey respondents mentioned, that they had to align production with the demand, as the demand and distribution had been changing. For example, consumer versus commercial. For example, demand for medical devices and equipment was pretty high demand. And also, as we know, we all know that retail shops were closed, and the e-commerce business was doing pretty good those days. So, but last but not the least, and to summarize this part, many companies were working on disaster and pandemic plans with different scenarios. For example, looking like what if scenario for how long the pandemic would be, and what would be the best case scenario in short-term plans, and what would be the worst case scenario with the long-term plans, and how the situation would look like when we return to new normal production. So will there be a pent-up demand? If yes, are we really well equipped for that demand, and so on. So having spoken about all the issues and challenges, I would like to point some companies how they address. So some forward thinking or advanced companies, I think my colleague Constance has a good name for that, as a leaders in the market. They had worked out their best strategies to maintain almost the same level of operations and services without having all employees physically in the plant, and to capture the knowledge and enable collaboration for knowledge sharing and remote support to ensure solutions that add value to their operations and are sustainable with digital capabilities. So according to ARC survey, some companies had to quickly come up with a solution that allowed them to capture worker knowledge, expertise for remote workers. But the thing is, the employees have to got to learn the new technologies with the minimal training, but it should not take like regular training of 8 weeks of time to learn the technologies, and should be learned fairly easily. And the technologies or devices that have to be used to be simple and intuitive. And my colleague Constanza would take you through some of those technologies and devices. Over to you, Constanza.
Thank you, Naresh. Of course, I forgot to say in the beginning that if you have any questions, there's a Q&A button at the top, at the bottom of your screen normally, and we of course have time available to answer any questions to our best abilities after we have done the presentation. I would like to take you through some of the remote technologies that were already available before COVID, of course, but most companies had like a pilot or a single project. There were a few very advanced companies. We all perhaps have heard about the unmanned oil platforms in the Norwegian Sea, but those were single events actually. But as these technologies were available, so during the pandemic, the manufacturers suddenly had to change the way they operate, and they were aware of these technologies, and suddenly they were in big demand, and also the support, of course, was a big demand for it. We as ARC think that the pandemic forced the speed of the digital transformation and has sort of catapulted us a few years into the future that we normally would have reached through a biological normal way that it would have grown otherwise. We're just looking at a few topics. You can just go on to the next one, please, Naresh. The next slide. Just one. Okay. Okay. It's okay. It's okay. So what we need is the information and the knowledge that experienced workers had to capture that in a way that it can be actually used to train new workers or remote workers or give them access to it. And these technologies should enable a collaborative experience, and it needs to have the ability to share knowledge on a local, a regional, or even a global for global workforce. The deployment started with the collaborative technologies we all were already aware, walking around the trade show, seeing smart glasses, cameras, virtual reality glasses, things like that. And I will go into that in a moment. And the thing is that you have to engage and enable the remote connected workers and the expert wherever they are at that moment to have a smooth running and keep your plant up. Can I have the next one, please? Virtual reality, I don't know if you did that, but I put one of these glasses on a few years ago. I got a bit seasick, but to train people very fast in a very safe environment, this is a good technology. It allows you to walk through a video or guide for a certain work instruction, or digital engineering is what it was used before the panic situation was of the pandemic. You can actually see how something works without breaking it. You can have other people talk to you and physically go into a room that you've never been to. More interesting perhaps for us is the next slide, which is the augmented reality. I mean, most people have also tried that. What it means is that you actually are in the world, you see what's going on, and you have the possibility to create an overlay. In the two pictures I present you here, it is done through a tablet, which on the left side, for example, shows you the state of an installation, red, green, orange, the famous three colors that show you if something is okay in problems or in real problems. And then, as you perhaps are now working on a machine you've never worked on before, or you normally do it with someone else, someone from the outside can actually, as you see, show you, look, those are the two screws you have to lose, and then you can turn this, and that should solve the problem. This has been something that has been deployed in quite extensive way, very fast. And it also plays into our next slide, which is the smart glasses. I mean, when they started, they were a gadget, and then they sort of died, and then they came back when the industry noticed this is a great tool to use in maintenance, because you got your hands free, and it has two advantages. On one hand, experienced people can capture and record and document their knowledge. And on the other hand, someone who is actually working on a machine has a question, can or use the knowledge that was captured because he has access through background information system, and it will provide you with actionable information. It will not just pull up the PDF page of a manual. Well, you could do that, but it will add information to that while you have your hands free. Someone can talk to you, someone can watch over your shoulder and say, oh yeah, I can see that, I've seen that problem before, or this is how you should do it, which enables workers, experienced or not, to do tasks that they have not done before, or to be sure that the tasks they're doing are executed in a correct way without having a second person physically present. Thank you. Next one, please. This is, of course, a bit of a general thing. We see normally we're physical present in a control room. What we mentioned before is you can see everything, you have access to everything. So now you are or suddenly in another plant, and you have to take responsibility of a plant. Doesn't matter, 50 kilometers, 500 kilometers away. You will need actionable information, fast, easy, and this is what these dashboards come in. They have been in use in lots of operations already, but they're of course a very easy way to access information even from other places. All this, of course, is a cybersecurity problem, which we have also talked about a lot in ARC. But it would allow almost anybody who has access to the system to take the decisions they have to take wherever they are. So we certainly saw a boom for this. Can you give me the last one? And just a short side sweep, which is the digital twin. Everybody talks about it. Everybody has it. Everybody defines it slightly different as I talk to people. But when it started, it was an engineering tool. It was a tool that would allow you to have a virtual project being built while the real-time project or the real-life project was coming to life. And it allowed you to already troubleshoot to see how things work together. When the digital twin grew up a bit, it went into the production digital twins. So it could actually contact the real production. You have a sort of back loop of information, problems that can be solved in the virtual world, that can be sent back into the real world. And and all this is then influencing a real product. This third step, the performance digital twins, of course, can also create things like dashboards. So perhaps we are expecting in the future that the digital twin, or whatever his following version will be, can actually just put all of this together, and we don't have to have 17 different systems based on different information. Because the good thing about a digital twin is that it has the one truth. It is supposed to know everything as it is in an installation, not as it was planned or as someone thought it was. So it is a beautiful tool to combine all these things. So we all are connected these days, so we expect this connectivity. I mean, it is essential. It changed our personal lives. I mean, if I don't know something like you, I will take out my mobile phone and I will just Google it. I will find out any place, anytime, on any device that I have available. I want my information. During COVID, we interacted with our families. I mean, I had a Christmas party with a Zoom call. My mother went to church on Zoom. I mean, just everybody, doesn't really matter where you're from, what you do. We are very, very aware of this connectivity these days. And we expect it also in our work lives, or our work lives can expect knowledge from us in that. So we want to access corporate apps, we want to access data from our home office, and we need to be actually fulfill our roles. We all have interacted with our customers or collaborated with colleagues using online tools. I've seen factory acceptance tests done by video, something that probably wouldn't have been accepted or even thought of before COVID. It was just the possibility to keep things running without endangering anybody, without anybody traveling, without any social contact. And it also enables, of course, what we talked about, the remote expertise. Somewhere in the world, there's someone who knows what you need to know, and you can, if you can contact them, they can help you through these modern technologies. Thank you. Naresh will take us now to the benefits and the recommendation that ARC has developed. You're still muted, Naresh. Please unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Constanza. So all of these technologies, my colleague Constanza mentioned, and the devices were not really new and were present before the pandemic, as we all know, as mentioned as well in the beginning of our presentation as well. But ARC believes that all of these technologies and devices help companies to capture and document knowledge and to improve collaboration and knowledge sharing between remote and on-site workers and remote experts, thus improves productivity and operational efficiency. But when we're looking at only the unplanned equipment downtime, which is coupled with the travel costs for an expert to travel to the site physically, and the time to reach an expert, including the travel costs and time to fix an issue, the return on investment, the ROI for these technologies spent, such as smart glasses, or augmented reality, or virtual reality, or cameras with headset, any other mobile devices, looks pretty high as per our research. And we also noticed that some companies that deployed such a solution as a proof of concept during the pandemic in one plant, they moved scaling such a solution to different, to enable remote operations across their different plants in the different locations across the globe. And when we look at the recommendations, according to ARC survey findings, adoption of these technologies have been growing at a pretty fast in the recent years, and ARC recommends that companies should continue to expand remote worker capabilities using new technologies to enable collaboration and sharing, not just for the pandemic, but also in the post-pandemic future. And by using new technologies, manufacturing companies can accelerate their digital transformation. And ARC believes that companies that shape their culture in this way will be more efficient and competitive as well. And companies should continue exploring such new opportunities for improvement and determine the best standards for remote assistance and technology. And with this, I conclude my talk, and over to you, Constanza.
There are some links and materials that we would like to share with you. You will be able to access this afterwards. We have some studies, we have some surveys, case studies, and blogs that have been published to the topic. We have a specialist in the States, Janice Abel, who is into this topic very much, and she is still working on it. So keep an eye out. We will publish more information about this shortly. If there are any questions, we would be happy to take them now. Otherwise, please feel free to contact us afterwards. If we can't answer a question, we certainly find someone inside ARC who can answer your question. And thank you for your time and your interest, and hope to hear from you soon.